This is Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister who's been in power for over 17 years. He's a divisive figure who is praised by his loyalists but condemned by pretty much everyone else. Behind his iron grip on Israeli politics lies a long history of scandals that leads up to his current situation, one in which he is facing multiple corruption charges in 3 separate cases filed in 2019, which include allegations of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Add to that the recent accusations of war crimes he's charged with for leading Israel's genocidal war on Gaza, which has killed over 46,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. These accusations are so serious that the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for him. Critics say Netanyahu has been using Israel's Gaza offensive as a means of pivoting away from his legal troubles that could potentially end his government coalition and land him in jail. Here's a timeline of scandals Netanyahu has been involved in. Netanyahu became Israel's prime minister in 1996, and within just 1 year he was embroiled in his first political scandal. In 1997, Aryeh Deri, leader of Israel's ultra-Orthodox Shas party and Netanyahu's coalition partner, was on trial for corruption. Deri pressured his ally Netanyahu to appoint a barely qualified lawyer named Roni Baran as Attorney General, hoping the new appointee would ensure him a favorable plea bargain. It is alleged that Deri threatened to derail the Israeli-Palestinian Hebron agreement unless Netanyahu complied. Netanyahu did cave, but backlash from politicians and jurists forced Baran to resign within just 48 hours. The scandal caused public outrage and led to a police investigation that concluded charges be brought against all parties involved. Netanyahu denied any wrongdoing, but admitted he made mistakes. Eventually, Deri was the only one indicted. During the 90s, rumors began circulating that Netanyahu was romantically involved with his image consultant, a married woman named Ruth Bar, and that a sex tape existed of one of their encounters. In response, the PM went on national television and confessed to adultery, though the tape never did turn up. During the same spell in office, Netanyahu and his wife Sarah were suspected of pocketing gifts and foreign contributions from world leaders, items legally considered to be state property. The two were also suspected of accepting favors from a building contractor. Both cases were closed without charges. Netanyahu was suspected of double-billing travel expenses and using state funds to cover his personal travel during the 2000s, while he was finance minister and opposition leader. After a drawn-out investigation, the case was dismissed. In 2013, the PM came under heavy criticism for spending a staggering $127,000 in public funds on a special sleeping cabin he used during a 5-hour flight to London. An official expense report from 2015 revealed how Netanyahu and his wife spent more than $600,000 of Israeli public funds on a 6-day trip to New York, including $1,600 on a personal hairdresser. That same year, he also racked up a $2,700 tab at an ice cream parlor in West Jerusalem. While these incidents didn't lead to charges, they contributed to Netanyahu's scandal-tainted image. In 2019, 3 separate corruption cases were filed against Netanyahu. These included charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Netanyahu and his wife currently face charges of fraud and breach of trust. They stand accused of receiving lavish gifts like cigars, champagne, and jewelry worth $192,000 from billionaires Arnon Milchan and James Packer in exchange for political favors like tax breaks, contracts for illegal settler projects, and increased state support for their businesses. Netanyahu faces charges of fraud and breach of trust for allegedly making a deal with Yedioth Ahronoth newspaper owner Arnon Moses in exchange for legislation to limit the growth of rival paper Israel Hayom. Finally, Netanyahu stands accused of granting regulatory favors to Israeli telecoms company Bezeq in exchange for positive coverage of him and his wife on a news website controlled by its former chairman. The benefits reportedly included mergers and financial gains. In this case, he faces charges of fraud, breach of trust, and bribery. According to critics, Netanyahu has leveraged his power to avoid accountability. He denies any wrongdoing and calls the charges an orchestrated coup attempt by rivals and the media to remove him from office. His allies, like Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, remained behind him. He even went as far as pushing for judicial reforms to alter the relationship between Israel's parliament and its judicial system. The reforms would allegedly allow Netanyahu to influence judge appointments, which would potentially help him dodge convictions. However, the move caused the Israeli public to lose confidence in him and sparked nationwide protests, leading Israel's Supreme Court to intervene. Many critics say that Netanyahu used Tel Aviv's war on Palestine's Gaza as a way to delay his court proceedings. They argue that by prolonging the war, the PM distracted the public and media from his legal jeopardy. Netanyahu now faces possible prison time in Israel and arrest abroad over war crimes. After years of evading consequences, can he keep slithering away, or is this the end of the road for the scandal-ridden PM?